People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Hosted and edited by D.B. Spencer. Season
2.
Episode
11.5. Frank Belknap Long. Thank you for listening. Find out more about the show at pgttcm.podbean.com or the blog People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos.com. Also at those two sites, look for the shop and support your 7th favorite podcast. Follow us on Twitter, Tumblr. Give us 5 stars on iTunes. Subscribe. If you don't want to subscribe to us on iTunes, but you want to listen to the show on the day it comes out, why don't you check out the Podbean app? It's a really good app. I highly recommend the Podbean app. I'm not even getting paid for this or anything. I'm just saying the Podbean app is really good, and you'll discover all kinds of shows that you didn't even know you wanted to listen to. I personally have found all kinds of great things. An Hour with Your Ex, a Denver-based podcast with Mel Evans and Mark Coulomb. It's awesome. You should listen to that. But on with my show. Relax. Let all the negative energy flow out your whatever. Get into a neutral mind space. Let the energy of the cosmos swirl and vortex around your mind and body. Lower all the lights in the room. Tell your coworkers that this podcast may not be safe for work. Tell the people in the next room to shut the fuck up. Relax and enjoy People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos, a supplemental episode. Frank Belknap Long. And if you thought that his name was Frank Belknap Long, I can understand. I'm not going to make fun of you, although I want to. I'm not going to. Let's get started talking about Frank Belknap Long, shall we? Like, who the guy was. What did he write? What does he have to do with anything with the Cthulhu mythos? And just to get you started, just the most basic thing, like, how would I know who Frank Belknap Long is? Well, let's see. He wrote The Hounds of Tindalos. Hounds of Tindalos, which I know you have probably heard reference to. If you haven't, it's the melty, drippy dog that can appear out of right angles. Not cracks. They don't appear out of cracks. They appear out of right angles. And has definitely influenced writers such as Ramsey Campbell, Lynn Carter, Brian Lumley. Long's Hounds of Tindalos have also inspired a number of electronica and metal artists, such as Metallica, Epoch of Unlight, Beowulf, Firex, Universe Zero, Edith Byron's group. I don't know any of these. I'm just looking at stuff on Wikipedia. He's produced quite a bit of work. Just if you were to look at his biography of short stories, collections, plays, movies, or not movies, but plays, recordings, but just novels and short stories. He's written quite a few. Quite a bit of stuff from the 70s and 60s and 50s. Quite a prolific writer. And a friend of H.P. Lovecraft. If you ever see a picture of H.P. Lovecraft with his hand, with his dukes up, like he's gonna, fight some guy the guy that he's pretending to fight, Frank Belknap Long, or if you've ever seen a photo of H.P. Lovecraft standing on the street looking like a creep, and there's a curly-haired guy with glasses, mustache, and a pipe, that's Frank Belknap Long. So now that you have an idea of what Frank Belknap Long looked like in the late 20s, early 30s, let's talk about Frank Belknap Long. Frank Belknap Long left behind a huge, huge, huge body of work that included over 25 novels, 150 short stories, 8 collections of all of his short stories, which that's a lot of times to be collected in other people's books. 3 poetry collections and numerous freelance magazine articles and comic book scripts. Ray Bradbury summed up Long's career as Frank Belknap Long lived through a major part of science fiction history in the U.S., has known most of the writers personally or has corresponded with them, and has, with his own writing, helped shape the field when most of us were still in our early teens. That's pretty awesome that Ray Bradbury says that you're an awesome science fiction writer. That's pretty good. Also, Frank Belknap Long was the author who had the task of wrapping up the Challenge from Beyond from last time. Yeah, that part with the worm who would rule better. Yeah, and that the worms, the Yacubians cube, and the worms, and the Carter Gardner. I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, yeah, Goldman. No, wow, man. Ugh. Charleston. No, that wasn't it. Doesn't matter. Anyway, what does matter, though, is Frank Belknap Long was born in Manhattan, New York City on April 27th, 1901. He grew up in Harlem, and his father was a prosperous dentist, and it doesn't say what his mom did. So I'm going to assume for 1901, in a major metropolitan area, she either stayed at home, especially if her husband was a prosperous dentist. I don't know. You can actually track down Frank Belknap Long's, or the rough area that Frank Belknap Long grew up in Manhattan at 823 West End Avenue. That's the best address I've been given. A lifelong resident of New York. He was educated at the New York City Public School System. As a boy, he was fascinated with natural history, wrote that he dreamed of running away from home and exploring the great rainforest of the Amazon. Frank developed his sense of weird by reading the Oz books, Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, Edgar Allan Poe, and Ambrose Bierce. Though writing was to be his life's work, he once commented that, as important as writing is, I could have been completely happy if I had a secure position in a field that has always had a tremendous emotion and imaginative appeal to me, that of natural history. In his late teens, he was active in the United Amateur Press Association, the UAPA, in which he won a prize for The Boy's World around 1919, and thus discovered amateur journalism. His first published tale was Dr. Whitlock's Prize, United Amateur, March 1920. Long story, The Eye Above the Mantle, in 1921, and UAPA caught the eye of H.P. Lovecraft, sparking a friendship and correspondence that would endure until Lovecraft's death in 1937. Long attended New York University from 1920 to 1921, studying journalism, but later transferred to Columbia, leaving without a degree. In 1921, he suffered a severe attack of appendicitis, leading to a ruptured appendix. He spent a month in New York's Roosevelt Hospital, where he came close to dying. Long's brush with death propelled him into a decision that would leave college to pursue a freelance writing career. In 1923, at the age of 22, he wrote his first short story, The Desert Lich, to Weird Tales magazine. Throughout the next 4 decades, Long was to be a frequent contributor to the pulp magazines, including 2 of the most famous, Weird Tales under editor Farnsworth Wright, and Astounding Science Fiction under editor John W. Campbell. Long was an active freelance writer, also publishing many nonfiction articles. His first book, the scarce volume A Man from Genoa and Other Poems, was published in 1926 by W. Paul Cook. The poems in his collection won praise from a great variety of writers, among them Arthur Machen. There's some other ones, but I don't recognize their names, so let's not bother. His second published book was also a volume of fantastic poetry, The Goblin Tower, in 1928, was published jointly by H.P. Lovecraft and Robert H. Barlow. The Horror in the Hills, a short serialized story in the 1931 Weird Tales, and one of Long's best-known works, and a really hard editor's note, a really hard story to get a hold of. I recently have tried to track it down for the next major episode of this podcast, and ugh, that is one story that is rough to get. Incorporated almost verbatim a dream H.P. Lovecraft related to him, amongst other correspondence in a letter, the short novel was published many years later in a separate book form by Arkham House in 1963, The Horror from the Hills. In late 1930s, Long turned his hand to science fiction writing for Astounding Science Fiction. He also contributed horror stories to Unknown, later called Unknown Worlds. Long contributed to an episode, along with C.L. Moore, Robert E. Howard, and H.P. Lovecraft, to a round-robin The Challenge from Beyond in 1935. He later science fictioned up a short story collection, John Carstairs' Space Detective, and the novels Space Station 1. These were in 1949 and 1957. Mars is My Destination in 1962, which I think is also a Stereolab song, and It Was the Day of the Robot in 1963. In pulp such as thrilling wonder stories and startling stories during the 1940s, Long sometimes wrote under the pseudonym Leslie Northern. What Long characterized as a minor disability kept him out of World War II and writing full-time during the early 1940s. Long reputedly ghostwrote 2, possibly 3, of the Ellery Queen Jr. novels, but did not identify which titles. He also wrote comic books in the 1940s, including some adventure stories, some scripts for Planet Comics, Superman, Congo Bill, Golden Age, Green Lantern stories, and some Captain Marvel back when it was ran by Fawcett Comics. He also worked as a script reader for 20th Century Fox in the 1940s, and Long wrote some crime and weird menace stories for Ten Gang Mystery and other magazines. During this period of time, he lived in California, which, I don't know, that's crazy. I don't know if Long ever hung out with Clark Ashton Smith or anything like that, but, I hope they did. In 1946, Arkham House published Long's first collection of supernatural fiction, The Hound of Tindalos, which collected 21 of his best tales from the previous 20 years of magazine publication. It featured works which had appeared in pulps as Weird Tales, Astounding Fiction, Super Science, Unknown, Thrilling Wonder Stories, and others. In The Man from Time, a time traveler from the future has an encounter with writer F. Scott Fitzgerald. Even versatile as a writer, Long changed with the times. In the 1950s, he was uncredited associate editor of the Saint Mystery magazine and Fantastic Universe. He was associate editor on Satellite Science Fiction 1954, on Short Stories 1959 through 60, and on Mike Shea Mystery Magazine until 1966. Long several times met fellow Weird Tales writer and poet Joseph Payne Brennan, and provided the foreword for Brennan's The Chronicles of Lucius Leffing in 1977. After the decline of pulps, Long moved into writing science fiction and gothic romance novels, even A Man from U.'s Story, Ziggy Bloom, the electronica Frankenstein Affair, which appeared under the pen name Robert Harriet Davis in the Man from U.'s magazine. Long wrote 9 modern gothic novels, starting with So Dark a Heritage in 1966, published under his own name, 8 of which were published by Lita Belknap Long, a combination of his wife, Linda Arco Long, his first name, and his middle name and surname. All were entirely his own work and were workmanlike productions intended to support him and his wife rather than to be of high literary quality. According to Elsa J. Radcliffe, Crucible of Evil 1974, is a very clumsy tale, both in plot and writing style. Much of its suspense seems contrived, and the plot tediously simplistic. Long also published collections of his short stories such as The Hounds of Tindalos and Night Fear, and poetry, including The Mayan Splendor, a biography of H.P. Lovecraft, Howard Phillips Lovecraft, Dreamer on the Night Side, and his own autobiographical memoir, Necronomicon Press, 1986. Illumination of his own life and work is also provided by his introduction to The Early Long, 1975, a collection of his best early stories. He was married to Lita Arco, a Russian descended from a line of actors in the Yiddish theater who ran a salon in Chelsea, New York in 1960. They stayed together till Long's death in 1994, but had no children. Long described himself as agnostic. Referring to Lovecraft, Long wrote that he always shared HBL's skepticism concerning the entire range of alleged supernatural occurrences in what is commonly defined as the occult. Long died on January 3rd, 1994, at the age of 92, St. Vincent Catholic Medical Center in Manhattan. He was survived by his wife, Lita. Due to his poverty, he was interned in a potter's field. His friends and family and acquaintances, having learned this, had his remains moved and reinterned in New York City's Woodlawn Cemetery, in a family plot near that of H.P. Lovecraft's grandparents. Despite a 7-decade career as a writer, he had died impoverished after many years of living in the Chelsea district of Manhattan. Long's fans contributed over $3,000 to have his name engraved upon the tombstone of his family plot. Lita died shortly after Frank, and her ashes were scattered on his grave. At this point, I would like to give a shout out to all the different places that are currently listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. So, shout out to everyone in the United States of America, of course. Hey, everyone. Hey, waving. Thanks to everyone in the United Kingdom for listening. I would also like to thank everyone who is listening in Canada and all of our listeners in Germany, Austria, and then Australia, Sweden, Denmark, the Czech Republic, Ireland, Norway, and South Africa. I have a bunch of unknown listeners, but I don't know what unknown means, so I'm going to assume that unknown means secret underground stations, or like people flying over the Atlantic or the Pacific, or I don't know. Oh man, I was gonna make a serial joke about the Lincoln Park pings. That didn't work out. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. You are the best. Tell your friends and family. Brag about how you listen to us on the internet. Again, thank you for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. This has been a super short mini episode on Frank Belknap Long. I was thinking about reading a short story, but then I thought, why don't you read a short story? Frank Belknap Long has quite a few short stories that you can download online in various spots. Just search for Frank Belknap Long public domain short story. You'll find something, whether it be the Mississippi Saucer, or something about space eaters. Yeah, you'll find it. It's fun. They're all about 34 pages long. A lot of his public domain stuff. I don't get it, but it's like 34 pages. I don't know if it's the way that it's all been set up, but it's weird. I don't get it. But one thing I do get is People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos is a DB Spitzer production, recorded and edited by DB Spitzer. Thank you for listening. Find us at pgttcm.podbean.com. Check out the blog at People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos.wordpress.com. Thank you for your continuing support. Check out the shops on the blog, or go to the podcast page and check out the shops there. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We're on the YouTube. You can subscribe to us there. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and a review, and we'll give you more awesome episodes. It really helps out. But if you don't give a damn about the iTunes and you want to listen to this the day that it comes out, not have to wait 2 or 3 days, go check out the Podbean app. Again, I am not being paid for this. This is just how I feel. I think that the app is a good thing, and you can subscribe to the podcast like straight out of the RSS feed. As soon as it like comes off the mic, I edit it, throw it at the RSS feed. It goes there. You get it. A couple days later, it goes to iTunes. A month later, it goes to Stitcher. Stitcher, you're terrible. I'm never going to tell people to use you. People with Android phones, Samsung Galaxies, whatever, go with the Podbean. Go with the Podbean app, and if that doesn't work, Podcast Addict or there's tons of other apps out there, but I want to tell you, go with the Podbean one. It's the one I like. All right, and finally, you can go to Etsy. I've got some dinosaur and robot prints that are super cool. Oh my goodness, I've got some new t-shirts up in the shop, and they are tight, yo. They look like scratchboard or lino cuts or something, and they are awesome. If you know me, some of you do, I love printmaking. Printmaking is fucking the tits. And I've got printmaking that you can buy, and I've got shirts that look like printmaking. Thank you so much. pgttcm.podbean.com. Contact us there. Contact us at the web thing. If you've got questions, send them to us. If you've got short stories you want us to read, send them to us. If you have audio you want me to play, you want me to plug your upcoming project, your upcoming book, your upcoming video game, don't just message me on Twitter and say, I've got a project. Send me something. And don't say, hey, I'm going to send you something, and then don't. I'm not going to shame anyone or say anyone's name, Sean Hode. And, you know, it'll be cool. Everyone's awesome. And everyone be awesome to each other. All right. Peace in the Middle East, war in the Central Core. Next major episode, horror from the hills and some Silent Hill. The episode's probably going to be called Hills. Just telling you that right now. All right. Have a good day, everyone.
People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Hosted and edited by D.B. Spencer. Season
2.
Episode
11.5. Frank Belknap Long.